Yay, we did it! Okay. I think our internet's a little slow, just a heads
Well,
up.
I just realized I couldn't do it on my iPad. I was all set up, and then I was like downloading, and I was like, I'm sure they're freaking out, but I will be there. So hello.
We're
chill.
we're really
We're
relaxed.
totally
It's so
chill.
good to
Yay!
see you guys.
I'm so happy to see
I am
your
so
face.
happy to see both of
Hi.
you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I'm like excited to be talking writing instead of visual arts. I think that'll be really fun. We should probably call this one like bookshelves because I went for our bookshelves instead of our file files this time.
I was like, I'll make it work. I'll make it work. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I'm
Are you
super
guys at the
excited.
house?
So,
Where are you?
We are. We got back in yesterday late.
We went and saw my new baby
Aww.
nephew. He is 10 days old.
Yeah.
He is absolutely
Where is that?
adorable. And he stores up in Bradford. So we did this like long, like get in the car, don't drink any water, don't eat any food, and then drive for 4 hours and pray you don't have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. I'm
COVID
still
traveling.
really very uncomfortable about like leaving the house. Like like I packed all the food so that we wouldn't have to like go to the store.
Okay, I'm not crazy because I was like, are other people also afraid? But cool.
Yeah, no, I'm still like super, super nervous about it. And even like being like in a house with other people that's not, I don't know, it's crazy how quickly your mind shifts to like a new safety. And then breaking out of that, like we got there and I was like sweating. Like I was just, my body was like totally melting down. So I was sweating so much. And she was like, do you want to
No, thank you.
Like, you know what? Maybe not yet. Because I'm clearly going through something.
That's amazing. Well, I'm glad you got to see your niece, you said? Nephew. I'm glad you got to see your nephew.
Yeah.
Very, very excited. Like it was kind of weird for her because like I think when you're pregnant and you're leading up to like giving birth, you have a lot of family support. And there was just nothing. It was just her and her husband. And like this week, my mom, me, and Chrissy went and visited, and was like, "We got the nighttime. You know, just make sure that like, what bottle do I need? What do I need to do? Change a diaper." Cool,
nice.
So like it was really nice to give her a bit of relief. She was like she was very run down when we first got there.
Yeah.
It's very emotional to be separated from family. So, yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing? So you're in the States, just like, we're doing well in sort of like Canada and the States with these.
You've been doing a nice balance.
We haven't branched out beyond North America
yet. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always so curious. You know, I've met a bunch of Canadians who are like, Canada is so similar to the US, and I'm like, it's literally not. So I'm always so curious when we go through shit, like, how is Canada dealing with it? Because it always feels much more measured and sort of, even if people aren't happy with the response in Canada, like whatever the issue is, it's like so much better than like how we handle. We're just like pandemonium. So the COVID has been batshit, and I live in DC. So you know, in preparing for today, I realized I could finally unpack the bag I kept in case like the military moved into my neighborhood, because I live 5 blocks from the White House, and that had gotten just crazy. It had gotten crazy with like the protests, but what I was more worried about was unmarked military that had shown up in DC, and like no one identified them, and no one knows what they were doing. They were just kind of cordoning off areas, and it was getting pretty uncomfortable. And so that ended a few weeks ago, but you know, it just made an exhausting situation just draining. So I'm happy to talk about creativity and creative process, but it's been an interesting time for me because it's been really hard to work.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. And I think that, like, I mean, for us, I think the fear of sort of relating ourselves to the States is always, I think Canadians have been sort of like programmed to be like, nice, everything here is so peachy. But then the reality is that it like isn't for a lot of people. And I think that especially for us, like with the work that we do, and like I was raised by such like a angry against the man, like atheist artist father, and like my parents were just like pretty like socially conscious, so they were always really sort of trying to say like don't just gloss over things because it diminishes other people's like experiences. So I do think that like we have a lot less people here and people are spread out like a lot more, and so I think it's easier to maybe not feel the impact of certain things in like the way that it is felt in America. Like even our big cities are so small compared to like your cities are giant. Like I remember driving through the States, like I've talked to you about those experiences and being overwhelmed by like the vastness of a city. So yeah. I think
and I've thought about you recently because you were telling me about like driving through Mississippi, and I literally wrote a story about that. Like I have so many feelings about like you and Mississippi. It's a place I'll probably never go in my life, and they're gonna change. Well, they may change the flag. They have opened the door to taking out. There's a Confederate block in the Mississippi flag, and they've voted to maybe take it out. And so I'm just like, it's a weird, exciting, horribly tragic time here. And so I do think things are changing.
No, Frozen.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think things are changing and mutating, and one of the things I have been doing when I'm not writing, which is most days, is I teach. I've transitioned to this online teaching, and a lot of the work I'm doing is around race and culture and social justice through creative writing. And so that's something that has emerged like in this COVID Zoom era. I like literally like live with eye drops now because everything I do is just online.
I got an ear infection.
So did my brother. That's crazy. I don't usually wear earphones, so my neighbors hate me, but that's okay.
Our neighbors don't know what we're doing, so I never see them.
No.
Well,
just kind of lovely little bubbles.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. So I turn it over to you. That's me.
All right. So yeah, we're gonna do our 3 shares. So I'm happy to begin. What one do I want to begin with though? Maybe I'll start here.
Sure, that sounds actually like a little bit.
So I'm sorry that everything is backwards. This is going to be the plight of doing writing-based things in a flipped,
Well, we're gonna read stuff, and that'll be nice.
So the first piece that we have is by Anna Mae Henry, and she's not actually a writer, but while she was here, she worked on this little pamphlet. So it's called A Moving Feast, and it says a walking and eating tour of rural Ontario. So a lot of her work centers around like place, food, like our relationship to food in relation to place. She does a lot of like still life and sort of like collecting. Sometimes she talks about food scarcity issues, and she like usually like right now a lot of her work looks at, I don't know if you remember when you were here and we went to No Frills and it was like all yellow like and black Helvetica labeling. It's like super basic.
That's a place?
It's like it's a
the grocery store. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of her work right now is like using that sort of template of design to create these little still lives that talk about sort of food culture in Ontario. So this little pamphlet was printed, it's Rizzo print from, I think it's color code, it's on the back, which is Shop in Toronto. And basically it's a bunch of little kind of recipes, but they're also kind of poems. So I'm going to read one, if
course.
That's okay.
Or how to eat an egg.
Yeah. Do you want to read it?
Open mic.
Yeah,
you read it.
So our first one is going to be this guy here. And this is titled How to Eat an Egg.
Nice.
In the country.
In the country.
Yeah, sorry.
Keep in mind that when you eat an egg, there will be no one around. Be in a place where you notice the silence. When you eat the egg, listen to your thoughts if you have any. Taste the flavor of stillness and solitude in every bite. If you are lonely, swallow that feeling with the egg and let it nourish you until you are strong. If you're lost, hold the egg in front of you and follow it. Eat the egg till you remember who you are and forget where you came from. Imagine it's an egg you stole from an eagle's nest. Of all the places and points in time, you are eating this egg here and now. If you're still hungry after eating the egg, walk to town, find a diner, and get a hot meal.
Ooh, I really love
it's
that.
good,
Yeah,
right?
it is a poem. It's beautiful.
It is. So there's two people that I pulled out because when you were here, you were also talking so much about place. So they sort of reminded me of you, and I thought you would like them. So that's
I
our
love
first
that.
Do you want to read another one? Since they're writings?
I can. Oh, you want the T for one?
Well, you can pick whichever one you want. You can open it up and see what's in it.
Maybe just one's good, because we have other books. They're all good. It's hard. There's a recipe of here too, which is fun, and I kind of forgot about it. No,
We're not going to read your recipe?
No, it's just for potato leek soup. It's good. I didn't write it like a poem. I wrote it
You would be amazed. It probably reads like a poem.
So yeah, that's our first share.
So, do I do one? Oh, we alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I bought this book. It's called Create Dangerously. Have you read this?
No,
okay.
But I love that title.
So I was doing some Christmas shopping, and it was like this little slender volume. This is as big as it is, and
good colors.
Right.
Front.
So it's by
like
Albert Camus. I think he was Algerian, and I had just the night before been having a conversation with a friend about not wanting to write. So I was like not wanting to write for like existential reasons at that time. And he was like, look, and he's an artist. He was like, look, like I figured out why I didn't want to write. It was because I had changed the style that I was writing, and it was incredibly truthful, and it was about family. Like I had done this workshop in Fresno the year before, and I started writing all these things about like my grandmother and like my upbringing and about some of the racial shit that I had like suppressed and like pushed down from like my childhood. And it was just true. And it was frankly really good. And I was like, I don't really want to do that anymore. But so maybe I have to get ready to write. And he was like, yeah, I mean, you know what you need to do. And then I found this book and I bought it. And like I went to a restaurant and got a couple of old fashions and was like, I was literally sitting there at the table like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, say it again, say it again. I was like, it was crazy. The people beside me were having like a meltdown with their daughter. And I was just like, are you guys, can I read you something? But, you know, at one point they did kind of ask me what was going on. I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction. Basically, he was saying the work of an artist is to create dangerously. I believe. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out because the whole thing. I'm trying to figure out like one little like passage that I can read that will exemplify it. Okay. Sorry, I can't. So, okay, I'll just read the back quote because the whole thing, it's not very long, but the whole thing is basically to sum it up. Yes, creating art is a luxury and it is something that feels like indulgent, but telling the truth and creating dangerously is like the job of the artist. So the quote on the back is, to create today means to create dangerously. Every publication is a deliberate act, and that act makes us vulnerable to the passions of a century that forgives nothing. So it means take everything in like your time, be truthful to it, and give it back to the people. And it is a luxury to be able to do that, but it's your job. If you have the like calling to do it, it's your job to sort of reflect back the truth to people, even when it's painful. So I highly recommend it. Create dangerously.
We were literally talking about that on the drive home like how hard it's been to like make anything. Because it feels, I don't know, just like there's such a block to making, and like why like why am I making anything?
It's your job. It is your job because you can, and you have the eye that can translate the chaos. Yeah, I will send you the link, but it's only about like 46 pages. So yeah.
Oh,
it's
like a wee little book. Yeah, it's like that big. But so yeah, I was like gonna try to read you something, but like the whole thing, he does like one whole like chapter that's a sentence, and you're like, all of it, yes, all of it. So I won't bore you with that, but I will send you the link to it because he also won the Nobel Prize for Literature, so he really knows what he's doing.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
Yeah,
sweet, that's awesome. Maybe we'll do this one next. So this book is handmade, the whole book. So this is by an artist. Her name's Katherine Miller. She's recently married. I want to say Johnston, but I could be making that up.
Don't lie.
But when she was here, it was Katherine Miller. And so, yeah, so it's a book that was hand printed. So there's collagraph, which is, I believe, this piece here. Can you describe what a collagraph is? Because I feel like I'll do a bad job.
You go for it.
Do a bad job. Do a bad job.
Okay, so it's essentially like you take so every print is made with a plate. And so with a collagraph, the plate can be like plastic or cardboard, kind of anything that's a flat surface. And then you put materials on top of that. So anything that will create an impression. Like, I don't know what she used here, but like there's a lot of like, sort of looks almost like dirt or pebbles, or I honestly, I don't remember what she put on this, but it's like kind of gravelly feeling, like it's got a lot of texture. And so you ink up the surface of this. So you could use like anything, like macaroni, ribbons, feather, like any material that has like a textural quality to it. And then you ink that up and you print those textures. So they're like a nice kind of fun, playful print, but they're not easy prints to like get a lot of success with. Like if you see a good collagraph, like that person is really good at making those kinds of prints. So collagraph, there's some relief print, and then there's some screen print in here as well, and collage. So like this is like a rice paper here.
You can zoom this up.
So this is like a rice paper that has like a wood cut, on the back, and then the same kind of wood cut print. Do you think it's better with this light on? So this is like, nope, that is not better. So this is the same wood cut print that's been like cut out and then collaged onto the backside of this paper. And then this is also like a really subtle wood cut here that's on that rice paper as well. And then this print has like that collagraph, that wood cut, and then like a cut out. So this is like glued on piece. Yeah, it's really gorgeous. So she was looking a lot at sort of like scripture, hymn books, religious iconography, and when we were talking with each other about like the making of this, and I was like, are you a really spiritual person? And I don't really remember what her response was to that question, but I do remember her saying that in a lot of ways she feels like printmaking is kind of like her spiritual practice, because it's a lot of like repetition and meditation and like treating each part of the process very carefully and considerately, and then like kind of creating these like altars to not pray to, but to like visit regularly and practice. That's amazing. Yeah, which I really like. So it's wordless. There's no text in the book at all, but just kind of different reflections of the same pattern and image over and over again, represented in different ways and handled differently, which I think is like quite beautiful. Also, it's just like a very well-made book.
It has a very nice texture to the cover.
What is the cover?
I don't know.
It's like a weighted sort of thing.
It feels like it's a handmade book, so like the cover I believe is
Oh wow.
leather.
Okay.
So it has this like kind of really matte quality to it, where like if I probably ran my fingernail on this, I'd probably scuff
Okay.
it up.
Yeah.
But it has that like it has a very when you like think about like books and the tactileness of like holding books, like it is one of those books that you're like, yes, this thing feels really,
I love
really
that.
nice.
Yeah. Do you think about that kind of stuff with like when you're writing and when you're buying books, like the paper choice? That I don't know if publishers make all those decisions.
It's based on money, but I mean, like this feels gorgeous. Like it has a sheen, like a weird sort of slickness to it, and you read it and it feels like an art piece. When I buy journals, though, I do like to buy a nice leather journal. It feels like I'm going to do some important like work in this thing. So yeah, I love that feeling like in my hand. Yeah.
That's what this feels like.
Yeah.
This is good. This feels good.
So what I've been doing, so a couple of things have happened to me. I was supposed to teach this series with the National Portrait Gallery where I do it in person and we look at a small special exhibition and we do writing prompts related to that. And so I've been pretty lucky with the themes. A lot of them have been social justice related or like reimagining telling the truth about American history. So like including people who are not included. There was one like was just on like lynchings, which was fascinating because I had to do a youth series on it as well.
What was that like?
Interesting because
how old were the youth?
So I was like, let's not do it, frankly, because the youth went down to like 8. But what the guy did, so this is why I think they thought it would be okay. It was a married exhibition between this guy who was taking the founding fathers and like, he would shred, his name was Titus Kaphar. He would shred the bottom of the painting, wad it up and like shove it in the mouth of like, you've seen that.
I know this artist,
Yeah, I think he just won a MacArthur. So it, like he would do that with like Andrew Jackson, like take your lies, you know. And so the kids were like, "Wait, what's going on?" It would be like Thomas Jefferson with like a drape over like a slave's like chest, and we had to block it off. Not we, but they had to block it off because people kept lifting the drape, and it was they said fully realized. And I was like, "Well, I'd like to see," but they had to stop people from lifting the drape. And so with that exhibition, it was Ken Gonzales-Day, and so he did a lynching series looking at California, but people don't realize, you know, the lynchings weren't all in the South. So these were Mexicans, Chinese people, basically like brown people who had been lynched in California later even than in the South. And so he took the bodies, he took the bodies out, he erased them. So I guess they were like, well, kids won't mind. But what he did is he took historical postcards that were sent. People would send lynching postcards. And so he erased the body from the postcard and you would see the people. So they're,
lynching
yes.
postcards?
It's like going to see an execution.
I've never...
It's like going, you know, like in the olden days, people would go see the beheadings. People would go to lynchings and they would take cards and they would mail them. And so some of them had the inscriptions on them.
How's this a thing? Like, you know, come to my birthday party, but like come to my...
It wouldn't be a planned lynching. It would just be like once you were there, someone would take a picture and make a postcard. Yeah. And they would send it. And so you could, and because it's the portrait gallery, these are real. They're not fine art. And so these are people's ancestors.
Right.
And so the body wasn't there, but the people standing in front of a tree were there. And you could see them posing. That was difficult. And I found, with that, I didn't have the kids do writing prompts, but they were with their parents. And so they were allowed to walk through. But I did the writing prompts with the other exhibition. That being said, I kind of have gained a reputation, whether earned or not, because I do the exhibitions they asked me to do, for doing this kind of like hard work. And then making people, I usually pair that with a poem or like a text. with this, we listened to Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit about lynching, and people were emotional. I mean, this isn't with the kids, but like people were crying. Like, you have to really, like, I need you to really look at the history of your own country. And, you know, artists have been, that's creating dangerously. That's telling the truth about something through art that people don't want to think about. And it's a beautiful song, but we do it when the galleries close. And so it echoes. And then, you know, they're looking at the art. And so that's all to say, I was supposed to do this series. It's called The Outwin. It's Portraiture in America. It was a contest. And so, not a contest, but a curated sort of judge show. And it's up now. And I was going to use it. And it was really looking at, the theme is American portraiture, but it's looking at reframing how we, American identity. So the people who are included were looking at that in some different way. But in the past, I think it's been more like just American portraiture, however that comes out. But this is very social justice oriented. And so I had the charge of creating workshops for adults and then for youth related to the Outwin. And so we moved the workshops online and we moved them to a happy hour. Thank the Lord. But I said to the person I work with, I just don't think people are up for writing about social justice. So this was in March, and I was also supposed to be in Brussels in March teaching social justice poetry writing. And I was just like, I don't think that people can, what I said, so I ended up teaching the classes in Brussels online, but I was like, I'm going to change it because they at that time were in lockdown. I was like, when you can't affect change, and you don't know how long this is going to go on, there's nothing more frustrating than being at home thinking about all these issues that you can't do anything about when you're just trying to get your groceries. And so that was 2 weeks in. So with the portrait gallery, I was like, I don't want to do social justice. I want to do something else. But it has sort of evolved into a weekly thing. I take works of art and I try to hold space for people. So I say, like, even if you're not writing about this actual work of art, like, please come write with us, bring a happy hour drink. You don't have to turn on your camera. But because I'm me, some of the social justice stuff has come back. And then I taught a class called Words Have Power, and it was just social justice poetry it was independent. So whoever wanted to come, and then if they wanted to focus on social justice, we could. And so this is a poem that I read, and I did that class about a month ago, and that was before the George Floyd killing. That was before, it's an interesting thing. So I am African American, and a lot of my friends who are African Americans specifically just are collectively exhausted. Like, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, I don't feel comfortable protesting. I have health issues. I'm asthmatic. I really don't want to catch the virus. And so it's a weird thing for me to be at home. It's a weird thing to sort of be, it's exhausting. So everyone I know is exhausted. And we feel like we shouldn't have to do this work because we've been telling people and telling people and telling people. But this is a poem that I had used with that class, and it has stuck with me. So I'm only going to read the end because it's a little long. So it's called Anchorage by Joy Harjo, who is the current poet laureate for the US, which is amazing because she's my favorite poet. And so she wrote this poem for Audre Lorde, who's like she calls herself, well, she died, but she called herself a Black lesbian warrior poet. And so it's kind of like Joy is the narrator of the poem is walking through Anchorage, kind of observing what they see. And they see this woman who they say is probably 200 years old. And so where I pick it up in the poem is kind of like a little bit of observation about the 200-year-old woman. But it's the part that is stuck with me. So they see this woman sitting on a bench, And this is the end of the poem. We keep on breathing, walking, but softer now, the clouds whirling in the air above us. What can we say that would make us understand better than we do already? Except to speak of her home and claim her as our own history. Know that our dreams don't end here, 2 blocks away from the ocean, where our hearts still batter away at the muddy shore. And I think of the 6th Avenue jail of mostly Native and Black men, where Henry told about being shot at 8 times outside a liquor store in LA. But when the car sped away, he was surprised he was alive. No bullet holes, man. And 8 cartridges strewn on the sidewalk all around him. Everyone laughed at the impossibility of it, but also the truth. Because who would believe the fantastic and terrible story of all of our survival, those who were never meant to survive? So that's just kind of, this idea of survival has really enveloped sort of my thinking for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
That's a heavy poem. I mean,
especially with like what's going on right now in the States, like.
Yep. Because I think
the exhaustion I can't even imagine. Like, I mean, a lot of the people that I follow on Instagram are African American or Black Americans, and I don't know.
It's a weird thing. I've never felt this tired before. I think it's the pandemic on top of the pandemic.
Yeah. But for me, it's also like the fact that people are still getting out and fighting for what they believe in, despite this like very challenging time. Like it's already so vulnerable to do something like that, to protest, but then to intentionally put yourself into an even more vulnerable state, I think is like, I don't know, just magnetizes the power of the situation.
And I would say in DC, and the more I hear about what's going on in other cities, because they brought in, because of who our president is, they started by fencing off the White House. There's a park, and it is the People's Park, and they're allowed to go there. A lot of graffiti happened, but they closed that park with physical barriers, and then that's where we started having the National Guard come in, local police forces from like the counties outside of DC, then this sort of secret, unidentified police force. And we ended up having just all of this presence. And so it was making it even more precarious for people who were out there. Yes, there was a lot of crazy shit happening at night. There were fires being set on like a business block, like things got burned for real. Like I'm not denying that, but it just got to the point where the mayor was trying to get these other forces out of the city. She had not called them in. And it just made everything so heightened. But at the end, and so that being said, like I'm getting all these text messages and messages from people that I'm like, listen to a podcast, like, read a book. Like this isn't the first time you're hearing about this. And so I think the work that people of color, not just Black people, but the people of color are doing is like, look, you didn't want us to survive, and like, we're still here and we're still like loving ourselves and we're still creating community and we're still creating art. And it's just, you're not going to kill that, but it's tiring. It's very tiring.
Yeah. Well, and also creating work that is like digestible and easy to read and easy to access, and like if you read any of the many publications that are out there, they're not like angry or screaming at, like it's like it's just literature that you can read, and like
like it can't be any more
there's just
clear.
like no reason to not do it.
So I just tell people I do a newsletter, and it's about creative writing. I started it for COVID to like help people with their kids, like do something together if you want to write together. But I've gotten emails like, what should I do? And I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? Think about it for a second. So
Is the newsletter just for people that have kids, or could someone sign up if they don't have a child?
Anyone can sign up.
Okay.
I
Cool.
created it thinking, honestly, schools would be closed for like a month, and then, you know, people would just have a little something to do when they wanted to write and not feel guilty. But it's for anyone. Last week I did a take on Kafka's The Metamorphosis, where, like, you know, he wakes up and he's a cockroach. And so I was like, imagine you wake up and you're in someone else's body or some other thing's body. So I think that's fun for kids. Maybe not as fun for adults, but it's my favorite story. So I was like, just give it a whirl, see what happens.
Is that on your website that you can sign up for that? Or
Yeah, I think it should be on my website, but I just told people to send me an email. So willonasloan@gmail.com, and I will add you. It comes out every Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sweet. You should put me on
I
that
shall.
list.
I'll write that down.
Yeah. All right. Okay, this is our last share.
Mm-hmm.
Again, backwardsness. I do want the cover of this to be
Nice.
appreciated because it's so great. So this is a book of poetry by a past resident, Phoebe
Mm-hmm.
Wang, and it's called Admission Requirements. So the front is sort of a collection of sort of like map geographies kind of
Mm-hmm.
imagery, but it's not of any place and it goes to absolutely nowhere. Because this particular collection of poems, and I think this was like one of her first like published collection of poems. But this particular collection is about sort of like immigration. It's about traveling within a place that you are. So she lives in Ontario. I think she lived in BC for a little bit. I'm pretty sure Phoebe's in Ottawa. But she like did work in Toronto, and she kind of like moved around Ontario a lot. And
She lives in Toronto. She was born in Ottawa.
oh, okay.
You're not far off.
So it's a little bit about like even just like
Mm-hmm.
traffic and like commuting within a place. But then it also has a collection of poems that are like reflecting on stories with her mother. So her mother came from Hong Kong, I think in like the 70s or something. And her mom's a painter. And she does like a lot of still life work. So there's a whole bunch of poems in here that are called like Still Life blank. And so those are like stories about her mom and her dad. And there's also stories about gardens. So she does a lot of like poems about like nature and gardening. And something that I really loved about like that part of this is that, oh no, are we frozen again? I'll wait till Willona comes back. I don't know if
I
she
can still hear
us when-
you. Hello?
She'll come back in a second.
Okay, yay.
I can still hear you.
Hey.
So, a while back, my friend Jenna and I did like a pop-up installation, and we based it on a poem. Oh my gosh, what the heck was that poem called? It was a Margaret Atwood poem called like something about a pioneer. Can't remember. That's bad. But anyways, doesn't matter. And it was like kind of about like the pioneer man versus nature. So how like humans are always trying to control everything and like enforce their rules and their boundaries and like their aesthetics onto whatever's around them. And in that poem, like nature sort of fights back and takes over and overpowers the pioneer that's trying to control this space. And there's a lot of like poems in here that are kind of similar, like this idea of like the gardener trying to manufacture nature, which is really interesting. And then like reading those interspersed with like how you manufacture a country, like because there's a lot of like talk. I mean, this is my interpretation of some of these poems, but she does talk a little about like Canadian history and like colonialism. And so, you know, this, I guess, me reading these like ideas of like manufactured landscapes and like humans sort of imposing these like rules that they think are important onto nature, and then that alongside this idea of like other people coming in and creating like what they think like humans should behave like and what space should look like and how land should be treated. It's really
That's
super
awesome.
good. Like, it's really good.
Do you have one in mind you want to read?
I know that there's one in here that, like, in one of the, like, readings she's done, she says that it's her mom's favorite, so maybe I'll read that one. I can't read. It's called Still Life with Dream Interpretation, and it's after a certain painting, and it's written in Chinese, and so I don't know how to say any of these words, so I'm not going to try, because I'll just, Chinese, it's just such a hard language to read. So I'm not going to say who the painting is by, but I'll take a picture of this page so that if you want to look it up, because she made the layout of it, and I love this about poetry, is that it becomes so visual.
Oh, yeah.
The layout is sort of like the painting.
That's beautiful.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'm not like a poetry reader. So, what if you never rose above the broad strokes framing your life, but instead stuck fast to the pitch of your father's fury, that you and not your brothers succeeded to his talents? It merely happened. The fine grind of gossip, the assembly line work clinging to your fingers like pine soot, the night school English and the gaps it didn't fill. No one gets it right on the first try. With practice, you'll be weightless as an orphan. Your own portable island. Did you wrestle free of that dream of flight, or has flight shaken free of you?
Oh, has
Good,
flight
right?
shaken free of you? Wow, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it really is such a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. It also is a book that just feels really good. Like, the texture of it is nice. The size of it is good. There's just lots of really great things.
Awesome.
So yeah,
that's your final. So my final one is this, which Kyle is a part of. It's called Black Coffee and Vinyl presents Ice Culture. Let me see if I can find. Oh, here we are.
Yeah.
Yay! So thank you so much for being a part of it.
I could have gone get
So I love this project because it was kind of like a weird dream that I have. Weird because I don't love nature, as the person before you does love nature. But I became obsessed with like putting together something that categorizes all of these fantasies that I have about ice and real fear. I have like this real fear when I created this about all the glaciers melting and releasing diseases. So that's hilarious.
Oh, I think that's a real fear. I've been like following news stories.
Is that a real fear?
The Antarctica has had the highest temperatures like ever recorded. Like, it is like a serious fear.
Because there's some
releasing
old
diseases,
microbes in there that were locked in forever, and they're gonna. You guys know when you start seeing Viking swords that are like 1,000 years old, like they got a little bacteria on them. Come on, don't be ridiculous. Yeah, it's a real fear. There are some diseases in there that were long dead. So cool. I would like to read.
Thanks, Willona. My pile of anxiety is not
That
full
was
enough.
why I created the project. I was like, what happens when these things melt? And I wanted to see how people's cultures would be affected. And then it became more of a celebration as it started to evolve. Like, Kyle's is sort of a nice scientific look at, you know, all of this engineering we're doing that is like destroying our planet. But, you know, some people, like the poem I'm going to read is from a person who lives in Alaska, and she's native, and her culture is dying because the things that they do to survive are going away because they can't live in that area if it becomes overrun by water. So I would like to read a poem by Vivian Faith Prescott, and she lives in a small town. It's an island in off of Alaska. Tongue of open water. In my dreams, I am fully ice covered, but when I awaken to warm storms and waves, I am shredded thin. My bed no longer hugs the coastline where walrus haul their bellies across stone and ice to birth their young. Ice now moves in later, vanishes sooner, and hunters travel for days and days. What do I make of this? They say I am an indicator of oceanic influences, but maybe I have convinced myself of this importance. All I know is this condition shows no signs of absorbing into my surface layer, no signs it recognizes familiar patterns or knows how to follow the contours of my landscape, and yet somehow fully aware of the age-old warning that I am too fragile to journey alongside any longer, the loss of my former self, exposed and gaping.
Oof.
Cheery little piece.
Yeah.
But like first little chunk of like where like they're writing about like the icebergs are moving in later and later, and like that's such like you think about like kind of the ice age and the cycles of being like centuries or thousands of years of, and like this is probably happening within a decade. Like from your childhood to now, like the ice used to be there, and now like it's way over there, and it's such that rapid decline that like it must be just soul crushing to see your environments like such rapidly decline.
And really like not by anything that you've done. Like, I mean, if you're living on an isolated island somewhere off of Alaska, there's not the industry that's creating these problems. I mean, you may be using materials that are like produced from those industries, but like not in the same immediate way that a lot of other places are.
Yeah, and like she said, the fishing has changed, like the things that they do for food so that they don't rely on, shipped and, flown foods, they can't necessarily do anymore.
Yeah, I was listening to a 99% Invisible podcast kind of at the start of the lockdown. It must have come out in like April, I would say. And it was looking at COVID with sort of a climate change lens. And yeah, it's a good, I mean, the whole podcast itself is really good because it's looking at sort of design, architecture, things that we take for granted or don't think that much about. Like they did a whole episode about how like the female body isn't considered in like very practical designs like seatbelts.
Oh.
And how that like impacts things like, car crashes because they just don't think about like the scale of a woman, the fact that they have breasts, in the design of that particular functional, everyday, utilitarian thing. So yeah, so it's a good podcast, but they were also talking about just the decrease in like smog in certain areas. So they were talking about, I believe it's somewhere in India where
there's like Mumbai where you could actually see like the mountains in the background, and they hadn't been able to be seen in like decades.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so people were like,
that's crazy.
And I think they were relating it to some of the changes in policy for the Beijing Olympics and sort of saying like, okay, when they put all these policies in place so that when they had the Olympics, the air pollution wouldn't be so atrocious. When like a bunch of athletes and visitors were coming in, and then after the Olympics they were like, they being the government were sort of ready to go back to like and the populace was like, no, like now we know that our city can function and be a place that feels healthier to live in. And so there was a lot of like fighting to keep some of those policies in place so that the air quality was better. And so they were sort of relating some of what's being seen right now. Like maybe if people see the impact on their life, when factories are sort of like grinded to a halt or there's like some sort of regulation put in place, that's like something that could potentially happen that might be good for not just the populace now, but
in the future,
to come.
It could be a very unintended positive spin to what is otherwise just like doom and gloom. And
that's
disaster.
amazing.
Well,
I mean, they said the carbon, whatever measurement unit has gone down so dramatically. I don't know about here, but definitely I heard about India and different countries in Asia and a little bit in Europe too. But I feel like we're still chugging along here, but yeah, it could have some nice consequences for it. And it's cute. Like, this is like a weird little thing, and I tell everyone this, and they're like, "You're so weird." But I bought a set of knives because, like, I never got married. I don't have knives. It's just a thing. Let people get as wedding presents. So I've been like hacking and sawing food, but like I was like, look, if I can never go out to eat, I have to cook everything. Like, I need knives. And so, like, I ordered them. I'm so proud of them. And, like, I'm making food, like, according to the recipe and not just, like, zhuzhing along. And, like, I made the best margaritas of my life for Cinco de Mayo because I, like, looked at a recipe. I'm like, there's no bartender. Like, you have to figure all of these things out. And so the quality of my life is actually... like, my home life has improved, frankly, from like taking more care with how I prepare things.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'm very much so, we're very much so in that boat that like being at home, like we can cook here and like that's great. My doomsday prepper mentality is a little bit worried because like, okay, well, like we've been like, gardening a lot. It's great. We can grow fruits and vegetables. Like if we got chickens, we could get eggs. So like, how do we make
oh my god,
this is a big discussion that we've had. I'm like, do we kill animals?
Wait,
like,
okay, maybe just starve and die at that point. Like, you're gonna make your own. See, this is the Canadian in you. You're like, we can do this. We can figure this out. Like, we can live on the land.
And then there's like some quick.
Just come live with us. We'll figure it out.
Like what? I'm curious.
I honestly don't know how to make oil. Like I
don't know how to
make stuff.
Like,
I think you press animal fat. Yeah, I think you're right. Because
I was like, that's the easiest way. I mean, get a cow. Did someone just put something up like? Did someone just put something up like? That's amazing.
I think because I used to read those Little House on the Prairie things, and I feel like they had a whole section on oil making.
Well, I've been watching this YouTube series called Wartime Kitchen and Garden, and it's like about it's from the UK, and it's like World War II era like food rationing videos, and they in one of the videos they're like, when your chickens are laying tons of eggs in the summer and fall, just glass them so that you can store them for 6 months to the winter. And I was like, sorry, what? They're just like putting eggs in
You're watching historical rationing videos.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't fresh. Yeah, they weren't fresh or healthy, but they were available.
Yeah. It was like lime and water that you just stack eggs into, and then you eat them normally.
You need to find out how that worked, though, because those were the videos telling you to do it. But in 6 months, were those people alive?
I'm sure there's like current homesteaders that are like trying.
Exactly.
Because we wash all the eggs. You can't wash them. You have to like take them right from the chicken and put them in
you
the
can't
glass.
wash them off. And then
no, because if you wash them, you take away that protective barrier that would like, I guess, let the lime come in and make it gross. I don't really know what I'm talking about.
I think, because I've been teaching a high school academy on reporting, I think you need to do some follow-up reporting. Like, put out a survey. Did anyone eat those eggs, 6 months later? Are they alive? How did they taste? Because you want that follow-up story.
I'll do further research and I'll let you know.
Yeah, because I think...
Do you still have one more?
No.
I think we're like...
I did 3.
Okay,
I have one more, but I'll just show it. It's Dirty Work by Anna Maximu. She is she's a Canadian author. I met her when I when I did a residency at Banff. It is, I want to find out where she did it. She did, she was doing housekeeping at Northern Ontario Fishing Lodge. And so,
oh my gosh, I did housekeeping for a summer.
Like, really? Yeah, so you would like Dirty Work.
I thought I would love it, actually.
I think she thought she would enjoy it. It's hilarious. It's her memoir about just like being like the only woman around and cleaning up after guys on a hunting weekend.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
That
fun.
It's a
sounds
funny
awful.
book.
That sounds terrible.
So this is actually a really nice cover. It has like it's turquoise, but she has like this wood paneling kind of texture, and it says, "My grueling, glorious, life-changing summer in the wilderness." Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, a housekeeping book. I would
Yeah.
totally read that.
Yeah, that's kind of up your
We
alley.
like shared stories. Although I was like housekeeping at like a bougie like hotel. So some of the stuff that you would see was like just really funny. One time we found a full size like cardboard printout of what I can only assume was the groom
Ooh.
of the woman that was probably
This was like a
the bride
bachelorette party?
getting, I'm assuming he's like in his boxers, and so we took it, and the owner of the establishment lived not too far away, and we went to his house, broke in, and then put the full size
In
thing
his bed?
in his bed. Yeah.
That's crazy talk. How did that prank turn out?
It was startling, yeah.
Yeah.
But
He's a good
he
Okay.
is a good champ. There's like lots of like, yeah. If you sit down and talk to like hotel staff about things that happen in hotels,
I think you would appreciate the book then. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes, we're gonna get kicked
Okay.
off here shortly.
Yeah.
This
It's
has
been so
This is
fun.
our Friday Flat Files.
Yeah.
This was really nice to chat
Nice
with
to chat with you
Yeah.
too.
And are the workshops still going on
Yes.
weekly? And how do people? Is there a fee?
They are
How do you-
free. They're Tuesdays at 5. So
Oh.
Joanne comes. She is, So we do have a Canadian contingency. There's a couple people from Ontario. Every Tuesday at 5, I can send the link to you, but it's through the,
Please
you can
do.
sign up through Eventbrite, and it's totally free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Cool.
awesome.
Okay.
Sweet. Oh, thanks
Thank
so much,
you,
Willona. It was
guys.
really nice to have you and nice to see you. And thanks for being our first non-visual artist. I'm so excited. We did it. We branched out. And I think
I
it
feel
worked.
good
I
about
hope
it.
People agreed. Like the writing.
Writing is, it can be done. So it's great to see you
Yeah, I was
both.
nervous because I don't like reading.
Oh, geez.
So, like out loud, it makes me very.
You did amazing. I always snap for all my readers, so thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.